You wake up, check your phone, scroll for a few seconds just to see what's going on. Then half an hour disappears, and so does your clarity, so does your focus, so does your power. Nietzsche understood something that modern life has completely buried, that constant noise, mental, digital, emotional, is not just annoying, it's enslavement. Every time you feel the need to react, to defend yourself, to explain, to post, to prove, you are being pulled out of yourself, away from your core, into a battlefield that isn't even yours. It's not just about silence, it's about what silence protects. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The one who reacts the fastest is usually the most fragile. If you like this type of video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Look around. Everyone is quick to comment, argue, attack, or explain themselves, and yet no one feels in control, because they're not. They've become puppets of their own impulses, addicted to stimulation, allergic to stillness. That's the trick Nietzsche saw before anyone else. Power isn't in the reaction, it's in the pause. Think about that moment when someone insults you. Your chest tightens. You feel the urge to snap back, to say something clever, but what if you didn't? What if you stood there, silent, unreadable, unshaken? Suddenly, the one trying to control you loses control, because true power, it unnerves, it waits, it chooses when and if it will speak. That's why your silence is terrifying, not because it's empty, but because it shows you've already won inside, and when you've won there's nothing left to prove out here. Silence makes you itch, doesn't it? Not the kind you find in nature, the kind you meet when you're alone with yourself. That silence between messages. That silence after someone disrespects you and you don't respond. That silence when your opinion isn't asked for. It burns, and it should. Because silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's the presence of everything you're trying to avoid. Your doubts, your fears, your insecurities screaming beneath the surface. And so, you run. You open another app. You say something just to fill the space. You react. Not because it's smart, but because it's safe. Here's the truth. You're not addicted to dopamine. You're addicted to not feeling what silence reveals. And Nietzsche knew, this is where mediocrity lives, in people who can't bear to sit with their own emptiness. Because if they did, they'd have to confront a terrifying realization. They don't know who they are without the noise. That's why you keep talking. That's why you keep explaining yourself. Because the moment you stop, you feel the weight of being undecided, unrooted, unformed. And it's easier to perform than to become. But here's the paradox. The silence you fear is the very thing that could set you free. Because only in silence do you face yourself without filters. No applause, no validation. Just you, raw and real. And if you stay in that discomfort long enough, you begin to hear something deeper than fear. You begin to recognize your true voice, not the one crafted for the world, but the one buried beneath it. Until that happens, you'll keep mistaking reaction for strength. There's a kind of silence that feels weak, awkward, submissive, scared, and there's a kind of silence that rattles the room. What's the difference? Intention. A coward stays silent because they're afraid of conflict. A master stays silent because they've already won the war inside. Nietzsche didn't view silence as passivity. He saw it as a move of dominance, not over others, but over yourself. Because when you don't flinch, don't explain, don't take the bait, you flip the dynamic. You stop being the hunted. You become the mirror. Ever notice what happens when someone provokes you and you don't respond? They spiral. They push harder. They try to pull you in because your silence exposes them, their insecurity, their desperation, their lack of control. That's what Nietzsche understood. Most people scream because they're terrified of being unseen. But a man who knows his worth doesn't need to be loud. He doesn't need to prove. He needs to choose. Strategic silence isn't ignoring, it's precision. It's knowing that words cost energy. And every time you explain yourself unnecessarily, you're giving someone a map of your mind, showing them exactly how to manipulate you. So here's a question. When was the last time you said nothing on purpose? Not because you froze, but because you knew silence would hit harder than any comeback? If you want to master influence, learn to master rhythm, not just what to say, but when not to speak. The one who controls the pace controls the frame, and the one who controls the frame controls the game. Silence doesn't mean surrender. It means you've outgrown the need to react. Let's be brutally honest. You're afraid of being alone, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. The kind of alone where there's no music, no messages, no scrolling, no one watching. Because in that space, the masks fall off, the distractions vanish, and suddenly there's no more pretending. Nietzsche saw solitude not as exile, but as evolution. He wrote, "He who cannot endure solitude does not love freedom." Let that sink in, because everyone says they want freedom, but very few have the strength to stop performing and simply be. Modern life has trained you to fear the quiet, to fill every second, to constantly connect, even if all you're really doing is avoiding yourself. You think you're staying informed, you think you're staying productive, but deep down, you're just terrified of what might surface if things actually got quiet enough to hear it. Here's the secret Nietzsche understood. Only those who can stand alone with themselves become unshakable. Why? Because solitude is where your identity is reforged. It's where the noise dies and your real voice finally speaks. And from that silence comes something rare. Not just peace, but density. A presence that doesn't need to shout, doesn't chase validation, doesn't beg to be understood. Solitude isn't isolation, it's incubation. And when embraced fully, it births something terrifying to a world addicted to noise. A person who doesn't need an audience. A person who isn't moved by likes, reactions, or applause. A person who is internally complete. And when that happens, silence stops being a strategy. It becomes your signature. There's a moment in every real confrontation where the person who talks less suddenly holds the most weight, not because they're passive, because their presence speaks for them. Nietzsche didn't see silence as emptiness. He saw it as compressed force, like a drawn bow that hasn't been released yet. Terrifying because you know it could at any moment. And that's what true psychological power feels like. Most people lose battles before they begin, not because they're weak, but because they talk too much. They explain, they over-defend, they expose their emotional map word by word. And in doing so, they give the other person the upper hand. But the one who waits, who listens with stillness, who speaks with surgical timing, they control the rhythm. And when you control the rhythm, you control perception. There's a term in social psychology, non-verbal dominance. It means the person who pauses more, who speaks less, who chooses silence with confidence, is perceived as more powerful, not by magic, by design. Silence can be a verdict. It can say, "You're not worth a response." It can say, "I see you, but you don't get to affect me." It can end arguments before they begin. Ever been in front of someone whose silence made you nervous? Who made you question yourself without raising their voice? That's not charisma. That's internal order. And here's the twist most people miss. Silence amplifies everything around it. One word after 10 seconds of pause hits harder than 10 minutes of rambling. It's not just what you say. It's how little you need to. Because when you master silence, you force the world to listen differently. There's a level of power that doesn't make noise. It doesn't defend itself. It doesn't rush. Because it doesn't need to. That's where Nietzsche was pointing. Not to silence as strategy, but to silence as essence. A state where you've outgrown the game completely. No more trying to win arguments. No more reacting to every poke. No more chasing the illusion of control. Because you've found something stronger. Self-possession. You don't get there by talking. You get there by confronting everything you've been avoiding. The parts of you that panic when no one's watching. The insecurity that screams every time you're not validated. The fear that if you don't react, you'll disappear. But here's the truth Nietzsche knew. You only disappear to them. And that's your gift. Because in that space, away from the noise, you finally appear to yourself. True silence isn't empty. It's full of you. Not the reactive, fragmented version. The grounded, rooted, untouchable one. And when you reach that state, you stop needing to speak. But when you do, the world leans in, because they can feel it. You're not looking for attention. You're radiating certainty. This isn't about being mystical. It's about being dangerous in the way the world no longer understands. Dangerous because you're calm, unshakable because you're clear, powerful because you no longer need to be loud to be heard. So now, it's your move. Will you keep reacting to every distraction that pokes your ego, or will you step back into your silence? Not to hide, but to rise, to dominate, not with volume, but with presence. If this message hit you where it needed to, comment, "I choose silence," nothing more, because those who know will know. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.